That is the Pathfinder platoon of 16 Air Assault Brigade, and that's me.
From frontline service in Northern Ireland, through operational command in the Balkans, to leading the army on the eve of the Iraq War, General Sir Mike Jackson never imagined when he signed up at 19 that he would rise to the very top.
Certainly not. I actually took the Queen's Shilling, I think in November, it was 1961, and reported myself to Sandhurst in January 62, Officer Cadet Jackson. No, I had no idea.
Known to almost all as Jacko, General Jackson was a key figure in many historic moments during his 45 years' service. But it was his time leading international peacekeepers in Kosovo that perhaps best illustrates the range of skills he brought to the job.
This is a very atmospheric photograph taken during the negotiations with the Serbs.
General Jackson already had significant experience in the Balkans when he became the first commander of NATO's KFOR, moving into Kosovo just days after the war had formally ended. He immediately faced a crisis. Russian troops also moved in and occupied the main airport. General Jackson was ordered by his immediate superior, US General Wesley Clark, to block the runway. But his military judgment was that was too risky, and so he famously disobeyed the order, supposedly telling General Clark, "I'm not going to start World War III for you." The recollections may vary.
The phrase about World War III is in Wes Clark's book, and so he obviously thought I used it.
Instead, General Jackson used his own Russian language and diplomatic skills to negotiate personally with the Russian commander, with the help of a hip flask of whiskey. It worked, as did his political judgment. Both Washington and London decided to back his call over General Clark. He kept his job and went on to earn the Distinguished Service Order.
I think Mike Jackson, having a good feeling for the Russian mind, after all he spoke Russian pretty well, having spent time on the ground dealing with the Serbs, his instinct was that to carry out the actions that General Clark wanted would have been detrimental to what we were trying to do, and came up with that famous phrase, "I'm not going to start World War III for you." I think it's also only right to say that as Commander of British Forces, I'd been in touch with the Ministry of Defence, and the Chief of the Defence Staff had made it quite clear that if General Clark ordered General Jackson to make the move with British troops, I would then play the national red card and say, but you can't use British troops, and that would have stopped the operation. And actually Mike knew that as well.
General Jackson's road to command in Kosovo included 3 tours of duty in Northern Ireland. As a junior officer, he was present at Ballymurphy in 1971 when the army shot dead at least 9 people, all described by a coroner as entirely innocent. Months later, he was on duty in the operations headquarters on Bloody Sunday, when 13 people at a civil rights march were shot dead by soldiers from the Parachute Regiment, killings which the government later said were unjustified and unjustifiable. Because of those events, General Jackson remains a controversial figure in Northern Ireland more than half a century on, but he also witnessed the horror of terrorist attacks against British soldiers, as one of the first to arrive on the scene of the Warren Point double bombing in 1979. He had to identify his own friend among the 18 troops killed.
So I look at it as the job of the security forces was to keep the space open for that political settlement to emerge, for the IRA to realise violence wasn't going to get them their wish, and that there would have to be a more political approach to the future of Northern Ireland.
When General Jackson rose to the very top of the army, Chief of General Staff, war with Iraq was looming just a matter of weeks away, and British troops were already at war in Afghanistan. While leading 2 expeditionary operations, including crises such as allegations of prisoner abuse, he also had to save money. His reorganisation of the infantry was unwelcome to many, merging regiments with many historic names and cap badges disappearing. But General Jackson, Jacko, was a widely admired and loved figure in the forces, even among many who chose less flattering nicknames. Inspired by his distinctive looks and deep voice, he was given the monikers Darth Vader and even the Prince of Darkness.
I'm not terribly sure that he actually necessarily ever took particularly to that name, although I think probably secretly it quite amused him. But no, when you've got a big character like that with the distinctive looks and growly voice that he had, you're always going to get nicknames attributed to you. And I don't think actually he really minded that too much. He was a towering character, a huge personality, a very strong leader, much loved, of course, by his family, much loved by the soldiers over whom he had the privilege of leadership and over whom he exercised command. And I think will go down in the records as being one of the most significant chiefs of the General Staff since the Second World War.
General Sir Mike Jackson did consider resigning his commission when he reached the rank of colonel. We will never know how different the army and the world might look if he had done so. James Hurst, Forces News.